Before Bryan Cranston became Walter White, he was Hal, a dad in his underwear, roller skating through the living room, speed walking in a skin-tight suit, building a robot for no reason, panic running from his wife, trying, and usually failing, to control 4 boys in one of the most chaotic families television had ever seen. But Malcolm in the Middle wasn't just a hit show. It quietly changed how sitcoms were filmed. It helped inspire shows like The Office and Modern Family. It turned Bryan Cranston into a star, and it made Frankie Muniz one of the most famous teenagers in the world. But the strangest part of this story isn't what happened during the show. It's what happened to them after. Because this show about a family where everyone goes in different directions ended with a cast that did exactly the same thing in real life. One became Walter White. One became a professional race car driver. One became a television executive. One left Hollywood completely. And one of them doesn't even remember large parts of making the show. And the story that connects all of them, especially Bryan Cranston and Frankie Muniz, is something most fans never hear about. Because Bryan Cranston didn't just work with Frankie Muniz. In a strange way, years later, he would end up helping Frankie remember part of his own life. But that part of the story comes later. To understand how we got there, you have to start with how this show was made. Because Malcolm in the Middle didn't just change the actors' lives. It changed television. If you enjoy revisiting shows like this, consider subscribing to Backtrack Television. When Malcolm in the Middle premiered in 2000, it didn't look like other sitcoms. At the time, most sitcoms were basically filmed like stage plays. Bright lights, clean living rooms, actors standing in the same spots, delivering jokes, and then waiting for the audience to laugh. But Malcolm in the Middle didn't have a laugh track. People talked over each other. The camera moved through the house. Scenes happened in hallways, in cars, in stores, in the yard. The house was messy, loud, stressful. It didn't feel like a TV show. It felt like you were standing in the middle of a real family's life while everything was going wrong. And that was intentional. The creator, Linwood Boomer, had grown up as a child actor on Little House on the Prairie. He spent years on a traditional TV set, watching how shows were made. The fake walls, the perfect lighting, the pauses for laughter, the way TV families talked in neat sentences instead of shouting over each other like real families. So when he created Malcolm in the Middle, he decided he wanted to make a show that felt like what growing up actually feels like. No laugh track, because real families don't pause after something funny happens. Single camera, so the show could move like a movie instead of sitting still like a play. Fast editing, so the house felt loud and chaotic. Malcolm talking to the camera, so the audience felt like they were on the kid's side. Fantasy sequences, because when you're a kid, small problems feel huge, and your imagination turns everything into a disaster. Even the house was designed to look cramped and cluttered, so the family always felt like they were on top of each other. Fox wasn't even sure the show would work. A sitcom without a laugh track was risky. Single-camera shows were more expensive and harder to film. The kids had to act more naturally because there was no audience reacting to jokes. But when the show aired, it felt new. Not because it was louder, not because it was crazier, but because it felt real. And that style, single camera, faster pacing, more grounded characters, would later show up in shows like The Office, Arrested Development, and Modern Family. Malcolm in the Middle helped change sitcoms from something that looked like theater into something that felt like real life. If you want to watch the full series again, I put links in the description. But the show almost didn't look like this at all, and the show definitely wouldn't have worked without Hal and Lois. And Hal only worked because Bryan Cranston played him in a way that nobody else would have. Before Malcolm in the Middle, Bryan Cranston had been acting for over 20 years. Not famous, not a star, just working. He studied theater, did stage acting, Shakespeare, small productions, dinner theater, commercials, voice acting, guest roles. For years, he was the guy who showed up, did the job, and left. When he was young, he even rode a motorcycle across the country with his brother, just trying to figure out what kind of life he wanted to have. Acting wasn't a straight path for him. It was years of small jobs and learning how to be better. Long before he was Hal, he appeared on Seinfeld as Dr. Tim Whatley, Jerry's dentist, the one who converted to Judaism and got accused of doing it for the jokes, and who regifted Jerry a label maker. Even in that small role, Cranston had this ability to be likable one second and slightly unhinged the next. But Bryan Cranston almost didn't get the role of Hal, and when he did get the role, he decided he wasn't going to play him like a normal sitcom dad. He played Hal like a silent film character. He was inspired by Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, which meant Hal didn't just deliver funny lines. He ran, fell, danced, slid across floors, whisper yelled, panic ran, and treated every tiny problem like it was the most important moment of his life. There are stories from the set where Cranston would go so far with the physical comedy that even the crew didn't know what he was going to do. In scenes where Hal had a meltdown, Cranston would run, jump, slide, fall, sometimes improvising physical comedy that wasn't even in the script. And the reason he did that was because he believed Hal wasn't a joke. Hal was a man who loved his family, was completely overwhelmed, and was trying his best. And sometimes that came out as panic and chaos. And that's why Hal felt real. And that's why, years later, when Bryan Cranston played Walter White, it shocked people. But it didn't surprise the people who had worked with him. Years earlier, Cranston had guest starred on The X-Files in a very intense, dramatic role written by Vince Gilligan. Years later, when Gilligan was creating Breaking Bad, the network didn't want Bryan Cranston. They thought he was just the goofy dad from Malcolm in the Middle. But Gilligan remembered that episode and said, "I know he can be scary." So the strange reality is this: the man who played Hal helped create Walter White. At the time, Bryan Cranston was playing his dad on TV. He had no idea that years later he would still be playing a role in Frankie Muniz's life, just in a very different way. But while Bryan Cranston's career was about to go in one direction, the kids on the show were about to go in completely different ones. Reese, played by Justin Berfield, was the wild one. Loud, reckless, always getting into trouble, always doing something dangerous or stupid or both. Reese was the kind of character who solved every problem with confidence and zero planning. But behind the scenes, Justin Berfield was actually very interested in how television shows were made. While he was still acting on Malcolm in the Middle, he was already learning about producing and how the business worked. And after the show ended, instead of chasing more acting roles, he moved behind the camera and became a television producer. He eventually became involved in producing shows and working as an executive producer, becoming one of the younger producers working in television at the time. The wildest brother on the show ended up with one of the most controlled jobs in Hollywood, running things behind the scenes instead of causing chaos in front of the camera. And then there was Francis. Francis was the older brother who was always somewhere else. Military school, Alaska, working on a ranch. He was technically part of the family, but he was always off on his own storyline, living a completely different life from everyone else. Francis was played by Christopher Masterson, who grew up in a family of actors. His brother is Danny Masterson from That 70s Show, so acting and Hollywood were always around him. But after Malcolm in the Middle ended, Christopher Masterson didn't stay in acting the way people expected. Instead, he moved into a completely different world: music, DJing, restaurant and nightlife business. He became a DJ, worked in clubs, and helped run restaurants and bars. Just like Francis, he didn't follow a normal path, and he didn't stay in one place very long. And then there was Dewey. Dewey was the quiet one, the strange one, the musical genius, the kid who always seemed like he was observing everything instead of reacting to it. Dewey was played by Erik Per Sullivan, and his story might be the most unusual of all. Because when Malcolm in the Middle ended, he didn't try to stay famous. He didn't try to become a movie star. He didn't keep acting. He just left. He went to college, studied literature, and chose to live a private life away from Hollywood. And, in a strange way, that might be the most Dewey thing he could have done. And then there was Lois. Jane Kaczmarek had one of the hardest jobs on the entire show, because Lois had to be believable. If Lois didn't feel real, the whole show wouldn't work. She wasn't a typical sitcom mom. She was smart, exhausted, stressed, and trying to hold a completely insane family together. During the run of Malcolm in the Middle, she was nominated for an Emmy 7 years in a row for playing Lois. 7 years in a row, and she never won. But Lois became one of the most memorable TV moms of that era because she felt real. Lois wasn't the villain of the show. She was the only reason the family survived. By the mid-2000s, something strange had happened to the Malcolm in the Middle cast. They had all started going in completely different directions. One moved behind the camera. One left Hollywood completely. One started a completely different career. And the kid who played Malcolm, the one the entire show was built around, ended up with the most unexpected life of all. And this is where the story takes a turn most fans don't know about. At the height of Malcolm in the Middle, Frankie Muniz wasn't just a TV star. He was everywhere. He was on the cover of Teen People. He was on the cover of TV Guide. He was doing interviews on late-night shows. He was at the Emmy Awards, the Golden Globes, the Kids' Choice Awards. He hosted Saturday Night Live. He was doing movies while still filming a network TV show every year. For a few years in the early 2000s, Frankie Muniz was one of the most recognizable teenagers in the world. He was 14 years old when he got the role of Malcolm, and the entire show was built around him. He had long monologues. He had to talk directly to the camera. He had to carry emotional scenes and comedy scenes. He was working long hours while also trying to live a normal teenage life. And then the movies started. My Dog Skip, Big Fat Liar, Agent Cody Banks, Racing Stripes. He was nominated for a Golden Globe, nominated for an Emmy, won Kids' Choice Awards, was doing press tours all over the world. But while all of that was happening, he found something he loved more than acting. He loved cars, especially the Ford GT. And he didn't just want to drive, he wanted to race professionally. He started racing in the Toyota Pro Celebrity Race in Long Beach, and he won his class and set a record for fastest celebrity lap. He moved into Formula BMW, then Champ Car Atlantic. In 2007, he finished 11th in the Atlantic Championship standings and won Rookie of the Year. He had multiple top 10 finishes and a podium finish. But racing is dangerous. There were crashes, broken bones, wrist injuries, concussions, severe migraines. There was one race weekend where he crashed, got injured, and still came back and raced again later that same weekend because he didn't want to quit. Over time, the injuries started to add up. He later talked about having multiple concussions and mini strokes, and he began having serious memory problems. And years later, Frankie Muniz revealed something that shocked fans of the show. He said he doesn't remember much of filming Malcolm in the Middle. Not whole seasons, not many episodes, not big parts of his childhood. And this is where the story between him and Bryan Cranston becomes something more than just two actors who worked together. Because this wasn't just one phone call. Over the years, Bryan Cranston would call Frankie, and they would talk about the old days, about scenes they filmed, jokes on set, moments everyone laughed. And Frankie would listen to Bryan tell stories about his own childhood, because Bryan remembered it, and he didn't. The man who played his dad on TV, helping him remember his childhood. And if you really think about it, that's kind of what Hal would have done too. Years later, Frankie Muniz said something that really sums up his life. He said, "I may not remember everything, but I know I was there, and I know I was happy." And instead of trying to go back and be the child star again, he built a completely different life. He played drums in a band. He managed a band. He went back into racing again years later in NASCAR. He got married. And he said in interviews that he doesn't spend his time being sad about what he forgot. He just focuses on the life he has now. And maybe that's the strangest part of the whole story. The show was about a kid trying to figure out who he was going to become. And Frankie Muniz did. He just didn't become what anyone expected. Malcolm in the Middle was a show about a family that never really fit in. They didn't have a nice house. They didn't have a lot of money. The kids weren't perfect. The parents were stressed. Everything was loud and messy and unpredictable. But the reason people still remember the show isn't just because it was funny. It's because it felt real. And maybe that's why what happened to the cast afterwards feels so fitting. Because just like the family on the show, they didn't all grow up and become the same thing. They went in different directions. They tried different lives. They figured things out in their own way. Just like Malcolm, just like Reese, just like Francis, just like Dewey, just like Hal. Before the awards, before Walter White, before Breaking Bad, he was Hal. And for a lot of people, he still is. But this wasn't the only cast whose story took a surprising turn. Some of the biggest shows of the 90s had behind-the-scenes moments that completely changed their legacy. And one of them is even more shocking than this. If you think this story was unexpected, wait until you see what happened next. Click the video on your screen now. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe to Backtrack Television, and let me know in the comments what show we should cover next.